All right, so welcome everybody to our webinar tonight. It's our pleasure to host you once again for another SBI webinar. This time we are going to be speaking about the next digital generation trends and how they are changing the way football is being consumed. So the title we've given this webinar is Reinventing Football for the Digital Generations. We're going to explore innovative new leagues and formats. We are joined by a very seasoned professional in the football industry and one that has collaborated with us at SBI in numerous times and projects. So we're really glad to welcome Keith Wyness, who is here tonight. So Keith, welcome. It's a real pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Diego. It's great to be here and to see everybody from so many different parts of the world.
Excellent, excellent. So just to give a little bit of background on Keith, he's a football business consultant in the industry for many years, was the former CEO at Aston Villa, Everton, Aberdeen FC, among numerous other roles and responsibilities in the football industry as well as in the corporate world. So we could probably spend a whole hour talking about Keith's CV if we talked about it for a long time, but as you can see, a very interesting profile and one that will be good to discuss this particular topic. We're gonna dive into these new disruptive league formats, particularly taking on the cases of the Kings League and Baller League, and we're going to talk about how this is revolutionizing how the younger generations are consuming the sport. Particularly seeing how football is, meeting streaming, social media, fan interactivity in a whole new way. So without further ado, Keith, we'll turn it over to you, and from this point forward, we'll be all ears to hear what you have prepared for us tonight in this webinar. So once again, welcome.
Thank you, Diego, and again, welcome to everybody. If you could just give me the next one. Thanks, Diego. Right, I think this is a difficult topic to actually summarize. I mean, football in general, when I've given many talks before, there's a historical context to everything. There's measured metrics, there's history, there's a whole lot of knowledge and experience. You've got hundreds of experts that have given opinions, and there's been many things written in the media. In this case, we're really at the start of a whole new generation of different products that are coming into the marketplace. And so we're all just finding our way through. And really, we're just trying to assess the impact these sort of new products are having in the game itself. Are they good or bad? And also, do they have a use for traditional football, or do we look at this in a completely different way? And that's where I'm really trying to find my way through, like all of you, in terms of this new area. I've been looking at it for potential investors recently in my business. And so I've been able to look at the whole thing with a different eye and to see whether it's investable, whether there's a real future. Is it a flash in the pan? Is it a quick sort of opportunity that may fade? All these questions are still unanswered. But tonight, what I hope to do with you is just give you some understanding of the sort of things that are happening, look at some of the new trends going forward, and then let's have a Q&A. And I really would welcome all of you to give me your opinions on where you think things are going. Some of you will be probably even closer to this than I have been. I mean, I've been looking at this from an overview. Some of you may already be participants in some of these games. And certainly I'll be interested to hear your points of view. So as I say, traditional football has evolved over decades, but these new formats amazingly seem to have found some traction. And this is what surprised me, is that the numbers they are producing already, even after a year or two, is quite phenomenal. And that's why it's worth us all paying attention. And if we're going to be involved in sports, no matter what the sport is, I know obviously we're going to talk about football tonight, but this has applications to every sport. And so it's something as a trend that we have to see and be, if we're going to be professionals in the game, as to something that we must be aware of and have opinions about and have views about. So, as I say, leagues like the Kings League and Border League, they've offered very dynamic, unusual, fan-driven approaches, and they've really relied on understanding the relationship that fans have had with media, and more involved in terms of the second screen and the way that they're using streaming and different things. So the objective tonight, I just want to understand the product a bit more, evaluate the rules, the growth, the potential of these formats. And as I say, we're going to have a little window in what I think may be coming next. So if we could just go to the next slide, Diego, that would be great. So the two main formats that we're going to have to look at, they're the two most prominent that have come to the front of the whole sector, are the Kings League that was founded in Spain. Gerard Piqué deserves all the praise for really getting that started. I don't know how much it was his genuine idea, but certainly he was somebody that somebody may have spoken to, but he grabbed the idea and he really has taken it and created an amazing business out of that already. As I say, it's football, but it's also entertainment and it's digital interaction. Those are the key different factors that we've got to always consider when we're looking at these things. And then we're going to look at the one that came a little bit later, the Border League in Germany. It's going global as well, and it's more short-sighted, driven by influencers and fan engagement as well. And I'll compare the two, and we can see where that goes. I'm then going to go on to look at emerging formats, which obviously have been around for a while now, the FIFA, the esports market, other street soccer, mixed gender leagues, those sort of things are coming up right now. We're going to look at the metaverse. And also, I've got some ideas about what may be coming next, what we call Project X, where I think this sort of trend is going. So hopefully this will give you some ideas and some thoughts. And tonight, to me, if we can achieve something, it's about stimulating your thoughts about this whole sector and to really get your views and create your own views on this and see if there's any applications that you think may work for you in whatever you're going to end up doing within the sports industry. So thanks, Diego. So the Kings League, we'll start with that because that's pretty much the daddy of the whole thing at the moment. Founded in 2022, still very recent. As I mentioned, Piqué was the major founder. 7-a-side, two 20-minute halves, and some unique rules in terms of wild cards that managers can play, and there are power plays, a bit like ice hockey, etc. So they've taken some changes to the football product. They feature both teams captained by ex-professionals and celebrities, and that's definitely where what I would call the halo and the hero appeal comes in. You don't see the professionals playing the game, the ex-professionals, you see them on the sidelines as the manager. And with my experience, believe me, it's the best way to do it because I'm not a fan of the legends games and those sort of things happening when you try and see the older guys who've just retired, no matter how big a name they are, no matter how fit they think they are. I've seen it with my own eyes many times. After 10 minutes, they're not quite as fit as they used to be. And so the spectacle isn't great. But many of them have developed great media skills. So they're great to be on the sidelines now and playing up the media opportunities that sit around these, the Kings League and the Baller League. Celebrities have a big role to play in this as well in terms of huge numbers that they can attract with their followers. And so it really is football in that sense, or sport meeting entertainment, that crosses in. And we're going to hear this a lot as we discuss this tonight. So the unique rules, the power plays, the death penalties, all these sort of things, and that they involve fans voting live. And again, you're starting to feel as though you're part of the game. But I think there's further this can go as we go forward. So it's you're feeling involved with these things more than you would do, obviously. At a normal game, you're obviously chanting and you're part of the atmosphere and you're supporting your team as best you can. But this really does make you feel part of the action. But I think there's further that we can go with that. So that's the basic Kings League at the moment. Now, what's interesting is that only 5% of their revenues are really coming from broadcast. That's a very small number. So if you look at this from the business point of view, compared to normal football, which is now up to maybe 50, 60% often of the money is coming from broadcast. It used to be 30%, but now it's up to 50, 60, depending on the league. You can see how they are probably more in control of their own destiny than letting the broadcasters dictate to normal football. And so that's an interesting dynamic from my point of view as a businessman as to how we look at that. Also, I mean, some of the numbers we'll see are interesting. And so if you go to the next slide, please, Diego, that would be good. So, sorry, this was the Baller League. Let me just go back and just a number first on the broadcast here on the market reach. That's what, the market reach on the Kings League. 79 million hours watched in 2023. That's a peak of 2.1 million viewers. That's not bad. Now, let me just add to that. That was 23 audited numbers, but I've got some of the recent numbers for the sponsors in 24-25. They had 14 million brand impressions that managed to reach those broadcasts. Those are big numbers for sponsors now. And so it's working from that point of view because it's being created from that point of view. The Twitch views surpassed 300 million by the end of 23. We're now looking at 400 upwards going on from there. YouTube has over 4 million subscribers with highlights and exclusive content. Again, all these numbers are being beaten as it goes on year in year, and they do brand extensions and bring in things like the King's Nations Cup and all those sort of things. So the numbers are becoming undeniable, and they've grown incredibly quickly, which is what's got everybody's interest and why people like me and you've all joined tonight to understand a bit more about this sector because it's proven itself already. Peak live viewers, we're talking about 150, 200,000 a game, and it's growing again very quickly as word of mouth spreads. And depending on the celebrities that they bring in around each one, you'll see that peak even more as it goes forward. The Kings League's looking to expand. Obviously, it started in Spain. It's got strong roots in Latin America now. And there's definitely going to be sort of Baller, which we'll go on to more the English-speaking audiences, and certainly Kings League's doing very well in the Spanish-speaking areas. So there tends to be a split in that way, but already attracting many of the quality sponsors. We see some names there: the Adidas, the McDonald's, the JD Sports, etc. All very good because the product has been designed to showcase their product, and they are attracting what those sponsors want, the Gen Z viewer. And so they're reaching to this particular market, which is a very sought after market, and they're doing very well. So I've seen, I mentioned the games there of having a peak of up to 150, 200 a match. During the Kings World Cup, we had up to 6 million watching that whole tournament. So, big numbers are coming in now, and they are becoming a force, and they will register on every advertising agency's radar now, because they will hit all the different comparisons, and so they will start to see serious money coming into media and into sponsorship. They're streaming it, which is the other big thing. This is streamed, and so while there is some linear TV, like for instance Sky Italia or ESPN Latin America may show it on what we would call the normal linear TV channels, the majority is being streamed through the team owners. And they are the big influencers and the big media, the sort of the big media personalities in the YouTube world, etc. And that's giving almost a lock against piracy in many ways. And again, a very trendy way that everybody in the Gen Z world is feeding into that market. So that's interesting. A lot of it, as I say, is not being watched on TV, although some of it will be shown on some linear TV. It's all about the second screen experience, which all of you will have heard about, of how we all now consume, or Gen Z consumes, matches on their mobile phone or their laptop rather than on the TV. So it's about second, often third screens. Those are the things that we're seeing with this particular area. Now, what's interesting is they just attracted about 60 million euros of funding recently. Now, that's a significant investment. Many clubs would love to get a 60 million euro funding situation. So this has proven that it's reached the serious level of proper investors now looking at this as a proper investment. And we're also now seeing not only in Kings League raising that investment, but we're seeing recent investments in each of the teams. And I know there's one, there was Tronkos FC, which was in the Kings League. They sold a 15% stake recently for 600,000 euros. So you're seeing the valuations that they're trying to reach. So this can only grow, in my opinion, unless there's some dramatic decline in terms of this segment of the market, which I don't really see happening as yet. But it may go stale. We'll see, and we'll come on to discuss those issues as we go forward. Thanks, Diego. The Baller League, which is, as I say, is probably more the European one, founded in Germany, just 2024, just last year, really. It's six-a-side, so 15-minute halves, small urban courts. It's actually been on Sky TV in the UK. A mix of pro players and influencers, but the pro players tend to be what I would say are not the names or the Premier League type players. They are perhaps the players that were lower down the league or did not make it particularly well as a pro, but they're still very skilled, very fit. Maybe probably the players that have got some great tricks, are great step overs, can do some other great things as well, and are great dribblers, great shot. So you're seeing a mixture of influencers again who are at the entertainment quotient, again with some skilled players. This is not just kids who are coming on and coming along to play with a kick around. These are professional players who have played at a reasonably high level, but are not the ones that have broken through. So that you're getting a good quality of football. Here they have some fan voting, skill-based challenges. And this is a very much a TikTok sort of focused product as well. It's got huge audiences on TikTok and streams on TikTok as well. Strong presence on Instagram, YouTube as well. So all those areas that are very big in the Gen Z youth culture, that's the area where Baller League is really getting strong. And as I say, it tends to be in the English-speaking countries, but both Kings League and Baller League have been very smart to identify where these markets are and develop a product that fits the market, and that's their strength. Thanks, Diego. So they started off with 1 million live viewers. Now we're seeing that this is growing considerably. As I say, there was even big numbers on linear TV on Sky. I was amazed to see up to about 500,000 watching games when they were shown on the Sky channel in the UK. But now plans to expand through London, LA, Tokyo, Paris, etc. Big sponsors again, Nike, Red Bull, all the lifestyle brands. And again, they're focusing on an image of inclusivity, street culture, keeping itself trendy, and trying to be as interactive as it can be to a degree. Again, they've just raised 23 million in the market, which is again a very credible investment and shows that serious investors again are taking Baller seriously. And it shows there is room in the market for both these brands, and they're obviously finding their own little audiences. There will be crossover between the two, but I tend to see a language differentiation between English and Spanish, and the way that's going, although there will be crossover. And certainly, while they're trying to be unique, and there are some unique brand extensions for each one, they're basically entertainment products with a big sport component. And it's appealing across genders as well, and that's where Baller is trying to be inclusive with female participants as well. And so I think there's growth in that area that has to come as well. I've seen over 20 major media partners, sponsors, up to another 20 sponsors. So this has caught the imagination, as I say, and while the numbers continue to increase, we're going to see this growing. The next season, I think, will be stronger, and I think they will do well. and I think they'll be even more established. So I think there is life in this as we go forward. So yes, please, Diego. So just to summarize the two components here, we got the seven-a-side against the six-a-side, both fan-driven, modified rules, and they've both got big Gen Z appeal. So that's the sort of products that we think that we've got here that will last. And there's no doubt there's been some really clever thought that has gone into the composition of the product and the entertainment component, which has kept it fresh. And one of the big things, of course, is the speed. 40-minute games, two 20-minute halves against two 15-minute halves. When I look at traditional football now, we've all seen games where teams building up from the back, slow build up, and so much of it. I think I saw that sometimes the ball's only in play for about 50 minutes of the 90. We've seen that. We've all seen bad games when it's been 0-0 and there's been no drama. Here, they've gone very clearly for quick, fast pace, entertainment, celebrity, action, participation, and they've tried to keep the whole thing fresh. It isn't so much football as we know it, it is football in a different format, and it's meant to be quick paced and speed. And, I think this is something perhaps football's got to look at. Are we looking at should the game, the 90 minutes, in some way be shortened, or should we be trying to keep the ball in play longer? Those are questions that we've all got to look at and perhaps learn from this in terms of how this captures the audience. Is something that I often wrestle with as to the way forward with this and what it tells us. But this is a key market, Gen Z, and so football will never become this type of entertainment product. I would never want it to. But are there some learnings that we can take from it? And that's something I'd like you all to think about and maybe share with us later on tonight. Thanks, Diego. So other emerging formats, well, we've all seen, I'm sure all of you will have looked at things like Football Manager and the FIFA e-games, etc. We've seen a lot of the clubs embrace esports and develop their own esports teams, and they've tried to do that to that degree. And I often wonder if there is a room, if football was to really take on these two formats, would there be a La Liga or a Premier League equivalent of Kings League and Baller League that actually had the names of those teams, and that each team had their own team with celebrities, etc.? That's one way it could go and could be serious competition for these formats if it ever came about. But I don't really see that happening yet. I don't think the clubs are that creative, to be honest. From my knowledge, I've seen that they want to, and they have to stick to their basic. We're a football club. We have to win football matches within the league. I understand that. But I think if you're going to be attractive and try to be encompassing, it would be brave to see which club might be first to try and compete in that sort of market. And maybe, 6 or 8 clubs could start to compete in a mini league and do their own, because I think they could attract celebrities. They could attract certainly the young talent. They've got it through the academy. And so it wouldn't be too hard. And given the cost structure of getting these sort of things going, with given you've already got the footballers, and given the way that with Twitch and the other streaming situations that you've got, the cost is reduced considerably. You may already have locations and indoor stadiums to play in, so it would be very cheap for clubs to try and launch this. So maybe we'll see that as a way that this could be a competition. But certainly, clubs did embrace esports. They have got their own esports team, so that's something that's happened. And we've seen competitive digital football already, with teams competing in Football Manager and in FIFA, etc. Well, they're not digital. We've seen other things try to happen. I refer to the NBA and basketball going 3x3. So we've seen the same thing with 3x3 and 4x4 formats in street soccer. And we've seen those sort of leagues try to go, but they haven't been able to catch on like Kings League and Baller. They haven't got the appeal, and I don't think they've ever had the ability to be thought through well enough to become a product that could be viewed. But those sort of things are still there. And, depending on the right promoter and the right person that picks it up, all these things are capable. now that we have the ability to stream at a very low cost to get these things out to the market. And, you are the ultimate consumer, and it will show by the number of people watching whether people like these formats or not. And something may stick, and there will still be another way that's going to be found that can go forward. In particular, I know that there's a women's World Sevens that's going to be starting. I'll be very interested to see how that could appeal to the Gen Z female audience. If a mixed gender situation happens, will that really appeal? We're starting to see, I know I've been hearing about mixed gender cricket being played. All these sort of things are twists on this theme. And it opens up a whole idea for any of you here tonight to create your own concept. And as I say, with the low cost now of being able to produce this and get it going and work through the internet to get these concepts launched and through platform, through promotions on low cost things like TikTok, etc., there's no reason why new formats could not thrive. But you're up against already two gorillas with Kings League and Baller, who, as I say, have raised money, have now become so professional and execution that they are going to be hard to dislodge. But of course, they all grew one day, so of course a new thing can be started. And so the fourth box I've got on here is the new gamification of live sport, and this is where there's a potential development where I think that this may lead in some way. So let's go on to the next slide, Diego, and let's discuss that. So a new format. Now, with Kings League and Baller, we talked about having fan interaction, but that's the area that I believe can really be put on steroids, if you like, and really improved greatly. I don't know the secret sauce in how we do that, but I know there are ways to do it. And I think that if you had real-time voting with genuine fan interaction and let the fans actually, if you can imagine, vote in real time on aspects of the match. So an example would be that, say, for the last 5 minutes, your fans could vote for your team to score, double goals, and the opposition fans could vote for their team to score double goals, depending on which fan base voted the most. Then that would be the ones that would get the double goals. So in effect, the fans would be involved and changing the rules of the game. So they genuinely would be interacting and they would have gamification of the game. So if you can imagine, this is gamification of live sport. So just like you're sitting in front of your FIFA screen and you're changing the game, this would be fans voting in real time to change with real live players the aspects of the game. Now, to me, that's an intriguing way to really look at where this can go in the future when you're actually gamifying live sport and live human beings. It's really an interesting way to look at it. As I say, you could do things like reversing refereeing decisions if your fans voted enough. You could, we can have also other things. I mean, I know it's been talked about in many sports and we've seen it in trials, but having more coach, referee, microphone situations, switching the power plays, the temporary rule changes. As I say, all these things become important. And if the actual fans are going to share in the prize money, which would be an interesting development, then you really are the fan base working with your team as one whole unit that's working together. And that's never been tried before. And that's something that I think is a natural extension going forward. And I would think that would be an interesting way to develop things going forward. Also, bonuses for skill moves to motivate the players. I think that would be important to really to do that. If there's, we all know that when we see the oohs and the ahs from the crowds, when there's something special happens, the players should be encouraged to try and do something exotic. And I think that could be great. So if we're going to have real time voting, then, I think that would be projected on, say in the arena, and there would be all sorts of exciting developments of that. But I think this is a concept that is going to be coming soon. And to me, this is the killer concept that could go forward. Now, it'll be up to somebody to execute it excellently, but I believe that can be done now. But if you, as I say, if you can imagine that the fans, the team are joined together and also, share in the actual rewards at the end, that would really be a unifying force that would become, I think, almost addictive to the fan base and really grow the fan base and motivate them. And if you were playing different cities, you may have Barcelona versus Paris. It would be fantastic to see the interaction of both fan bases being strategic and being clever about their voting and how things could be done. There'll be all sorts of rules, obviously, placed on this, and what could be, how many votes you could have, and all those sort of things. But given those parameters, please understand with me that this is the format I think that could really be the game changer as we go forward. So it's something that I think you should all think about, and how you can actually make this more, not just a great visual experience, but it puts you right in the game as well. And if we could just go to the next slide, we'll talk about putting yourself into something as well, which is the metaverse. Now, I've been dealing with and speaking to the guys there called the Guardians of the Ball. You can see they've got a great website. And while they've been based in Argentina and getting started, they've done really well in that market. And this is another area in the digital world where we're reinventing football to a great degree to actually take football into the metaverse. Now, to me, the metaverse was something when, I'd heard about it a few years ago. It never really took off as far as I was concerned. But this format seems to be getting traction now. And we're seeing again, perhaps its time is coming. And all these things that were probably may be ahead of their time, I do feel that we're now getting back to these sort of opportunities, getting proper business people behind them, executing them properly. And now, entertainment companies are getting involved. We all know that, social media numbers are important for celebrities, etc. And so all these things now combined together make the metaverse interesting. Now, for those of you that understand the metaverse, of course, it's a virtual world where you go into, and you can actually go in and you can actually buy a seat in a virtual stadium, and you can go in there and you can watch a virtual game. You can see the game screened in your virtual stadium, go to the virtual shop, buy your virtual hot dog, buy your virtual kit. All these things are incredible. And I know that they're already in the Argentinian model attracting retailers to be actually having virtual stores within the metaverse at the stadium. They're attracting sponsors to put up billboards in the virtual world. All these things are incredible. So we're seeing, the leagues, the players, artists, legends, everything interact with the other fans in a one of a kind environment. It's something that is very different, and I have experienced it. And as I say, I've seen the big penetration in this in Argentina, and I found it interesting where there's about 40 clubs now in South America that are taking part in this experiment, and they're already starting to get some very big numbers. And it's once it takes off in a club, uh, I see it grow very quickly. And again, this is totally a Gen Z led situation where people are going into the metaverse, into their virtual world, and experiencing their football and their football club, and an experience that you can't get in the real world because it's anything can happen in that the metaverse in many ways. Atletico Madrid in Europe have been one of the early adopters of this, and they're experimenting with ways to do this in the metaverse. The Gulf presence is growing. I know that they're trying very hard to grow that, and they've got bases down in Dubai, etc., that are going there. And both real football as we know it and in the new hybrid will exist. So you could imagine that you could go in to your metaverse stadium, and there would be a screening of the genuinely live game from Anfield at Liverpool, and you could watch that game in your virtual stadium. But you'd have a different match day experience, and you'd be able to join a lot of the crowd that were there as well. It'd be great for away games, how you have your own virtual place to watch the away games together and experience a lot of what goes on. So, the metaverse, when it first started, they claimed there was an 800 billion market size as the opportunity. This is obviously a very small fraction of that, but I always watch for trends in other countries. And in Argentina in particular, I mean, look, I don't know how many of you have watched the turnaround in the Argentinian economy, but it has turned around to a degree. And this sort of free thinking and this sort of experience that they've got now with their clubs in Argentina, which is one of the great homes of football, as we all know, the World Cup holders, um, leads me to pay a lot of attention to this, because if it's working there, then what else can be done? And the creativity here, it's unlimited in terms of what you can do in the metaverse. So there's a lot of things here that we talk about reinventing football for the digital world. These are different things that are now really happening, are getting traction, and are something that we all have to pay attention to. Well, a lot of us, as I say, have been looking at historical situations, traditions in football. This new trends are only the first few. There's going to be more to come, and that's where I think we've all got to be aware of what's going on, because I know, I mean, I have a young son. This is exactly how he is consuming his football. I asked him about Baller. He knew every player. He knew the teams. He knew about Kings League. He knew about the metaverse. And yet I was late to the party. While I'm older than most of you, of course, on here, still I like to try and keep up with the trends, but because I can see a business case developing with each of these trends, which I find very exciting. So that's the metaverse. Diego, thank you. If you could just move on. So, what are the future of these formats? I mean, this is interesting. I mean, we've got this hybridization, if I can say that, which is a mix of traditional and digital football. That seems to be one of the future, obviously that we've got there is this traditional mix, but it's been reformatted to be more entertainment. It's almost as though football is almost incidental to the entertainment format and the attraction of the speed, the movement, and the glitz is what I would say, the speed, the tricks, the magic. It's the circus of football, and that's what's working so far. And that's something that is a new product. And while it doesn't impinge on traditional football, it sits next to it, and it adds, as I say, it drags an audience into it. What I would like to see is clubs capitalize on it, so that the big clubs, and I'm surprised the Real Madrids, the Barcelonas, the Liverpools, the Manchester Uniteds, haven't already developed, as I said earlier, something along these lines themselves, because they need to keep their brands fresh, and they need to attract that Gen Z audience. So I do see something happening in terms of those clubs if they get switched on and turned on in the marketing sense, which many of them aren't. Let's be honest. I mean, a lot of them are still very stuck in the traditional mode, but they're going to have to do something to try and keep their brand fresh and appeal to this young audience. So could there be takeovers? Could there be something going on? Potentially. Also, those of you that follow politics and President Trump in America, you may have seen the last couple of days he signed what's called the Genius Act, which is really all about crypto, which I think is fascinating in terms of the impact on these particular formats, because crypto will lead to a lot of these situations becoming more accessible and will allow fans a way to invest and to be part of these formats even more. So that's another area where I think we're into a new, digital age for reinventing football in the digital age, is crypto coming into these in more ways. And that's the way that I think is going to build number two in terms of the global expansion. If you look at the adoption of crypto, the age is skewed so much more towards that young market. But there are massive numbers in terms of the people that have either bought crypto, used crypto, and the crypto wallets. Probably three main companies that have the crypto exchanges and crypto wallets. Their databases are phenomenal in terms of the scale. I mean, we're talking in the billions already in terms of crypto, people who've dabbled with the market or who are regular traders, and tying those into the value of sporting assets in some way, whether it be almost like a betting activity, or it may not be that. It may just be pure ownership of these franchises. and being able to participate in games, as I say, sharing in the prize money. This whole crypto area and as I say, this Genius Act just signed a couple of days ago, to me signals the fact that crypto is going to get bigger and bigger, and that may be a way that we're going to go forward. And that leads us, as I say, to number 3, where everything will be targeted around the fan. So rather than having the club where the fans feed into it, I think we're going to see the other way around, where the clubs and the products are going to have to feed into the fan. And so it's going to be a different way that we see things happening. And so there'll be a whole range of products and probably different sports where we're going to see the fans being offered these different products by the people that are really clever enough to develop the products to offer them. And that may not be traditional football clubs. It may well be these new products that become bigger and bigger. And there's no reason to say why the Kings League or Baller League eventually could not become bigger than the Premier League in some way. There's no reason why it couldn't in time, if patterns of behaviour change. And things do change, especially in the world. They change very quickly these days. So it's interesting thoughts that we've got to look at that as to the change in all these different things that are happening right now. And as I said right at the start of my talk, it's important we realize that these formats are changing, and they're changing very quickly. There is no pattern, no roadmap of how this is going to happen. And we all know now that things are changing quicker than ever before. What used to take 10 years to happen now takes 3 months. And now from 3 months, it could take a week. Things are moving at such a pace. And if you're going to be involved in sports management in some way in the business of sports, then you're really going to have to understand how to cope with that quick change in many things. We know that the traditional format of football has got, still got huge longevity, of course, but will it be eroded and eaten away at by these different things, or will it add to it? These are the questions that we've got to try and look at tonight. So please, Diego, if you go on to the next slide. So these new leagues are redefining football for a digital age. I really believe they are, but I think they're just a starting point. And that's where I think we've got to conclude that tonight, that all these leagues is probably the start of a massive sea change in the way that things are happening. It's almost like climate change in a way, that things are becoming unavoidable. And so are these changes becoming unavoidable, or will football roll with the changes and adopt them? That's the big questions that I've really got as to how the industry is going to react. I don't have the answers, but certainly I think it's an important way that we've got to think about these things as something that is a trend that's now already, is moving. And are we going to go with it, or are we going to step aside from it? And those are the questions you've got to ask yourselves as to how you engage in your own businesses, as to whether these have additional value for you, whether you think it's a trend that you want to be, jumping on board, or whether it's something you think will fade out and die. And it could well do that as well. As I say, I have no answers, but I think from the signs we've seen so far, if it's a flash in the pan, it's a pretty big flash, and I think it has got all the signs of having some longevity as we go forward. So next slide, please, Diego. So conclusion number 2. This is my conclusion. Are the new football formats of Baller and Kings Leagues, they're not inherently good or bad for football. They simply represent a different vision of the sport. They're largely positive from my point of view, because they do expand football's appeal, although it's not really football, it is entertainment. But nevertheless, I'd rather have it closer to football than losing it all to Netflix or to YouTube or some other way that is not even touching football. So from my point of view as a football guy, I see the opportunity here. It's operating with diverse talent. It challenges the traditional norms, and it will definitely alienate some of the purists. I understand that, and to many degrees, I'm a purist. But nevertheless, I can't help but be intrigued by the growth and the ability to use technology and the digital era to try and change the way sport is being consumed, And we cannot ever avoid now the way that technology is being consumed by the younger generation. And so we have to be aware of it. And I just think these guys that develop these formats have been very clever in spotting that. And it's only, to me, it just seems to grow. But I think it's good for football that it's connected with it. I think it's obvious for the Baller League and the Kings League that they used football as their channel because of the massive, global, uh, interest in football. So they had a very big platform to work from. It may not have worked so well in other sports, but now there's a chance, I think, that these have established themselves in these sports, that it could go on into cricket, into basketball, into other major sports all around the globe. And so these have been the two proving grounds. And as I say, I think from football's point of view, they should be getting on board to a much greater degree than they are doing. But nevertheless, they should be pleased it's there. Otherwise, we may have lost a lot of the younger generation completely from football. At least there's some sort of connection to football to a degree. And number three, conclusion, please, Diego. So ultimately, their success will depend on whether they can balance innovation with the core values that make football beloved worldwide. In the end, football does entertain. I mean, we all know that if you watch a great final, some of the Champions League games this year in UEFA, the semi-finals were just spectacular in terms of their entertainment value. And nothing can replace that in its own format. And it's a case of whether you can balance the innovation with these core values of traditional support for clubs. And I think they can do that by making the fan even more involved than they've ever been at a football club before. There's been a lot of talk in football over the last, I suppose it's really been 5 years. I've seen the words fan engagement coming to the fore time and time again. We've seen it as a main thrust. I saw it before with CSR back in the early 2000s. And fan engagement is one thing, but I'm talking here, as I mentioned earlier, with these products, they're actually taking fan engagement to a whole new level. And if you feel that you're actually helping to influence the results in a game and you're actually managing to share in the prize money as well with your team, you really do feel part of the group. And so your loyalty is immense. And so that's where traditional clubs, while they say they got fan engagement and they're trying to attract the fans to have closer relationships with the club, they may share, great social media clips with players. They may show them at home, show them in their lifestyle. They try and get the fans closer to these things. They try and be cute with some social funny media stuff. All those things they work on, but they can never ever get a fan as close as a fan could get with these sort of formats, if you all take my point. So it's an interesting balance as to how you could be consumed and really caught up and be part of the whole experience rather than just a viewer. Well, as emotional as it is to watch your team win a trophy and to win, or in a great game or a loss, it is emotional and it's still a great, family, potentially a family thing as well. This can be something that can take that experience to a whole new level. So that's where I think their success will come. And that's why I mentioned about the new formats, where I think the success will ultimately lie, is how close you can make the fan become in these formats and not just create an entertainment spectacle. So that's where where I think the market in these areas is as we sit today. It's my assessment of something that's very new. It's only a couple of years as a market segment. As I said, the numbers are incredible, and it's interesting, what's going to happen next. But we know that there are some very clever developments within AI now. We haven't even really layered AI into this at all in any way. So you start to look at the possibilities, and now with graphics and the whole things that could be done with AI and with real-time motion capture, uh, we're going to see this just enhance itself again and again and become more cinematic in many ways. And so, the options are limitless in terms of where this may go. And so it's an area that I think is really worth watching. It's exciting. I'm enjoying seeing it develop from a business point of view. And I hope that my guide tonight has been helpful for you in terms of stimulating some interest in this sector and looking at what we can try and view together. You guys are the ones, you're the Gen Z, and many of you, and you're the ones that will be the future. And so I'm really interested to hear questions and any thoughts on what is a very exciting chapter in the world where football meets entertainment. So I hope that was of some use to you, and I'd like to know any thoughts.
Thank you, Keith. Really interesting insights on the presentation. So if any of you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. We'd love to hear your thoughts, as Keith said. As you begin typing your questions and getting in touch through the chat, I did want to mention that one of the reasons we run this webinar is to showcase a little bit, give a small taste of what we do with our courses at SBI. Of course, those of you here probably know of us already. We are a private educational institution that focuses on the business of sport. We've been in the market for a number of years, and one of the things that we're very proud is that a lot of the people that have done our programs have used education as a platform, and speakers like Keith, who come and share their insights, provide a lot of value to the people that are doing our program. So if you are interested to learn more about what we do at SBI and some of the courses we run, we bring in top speakers from across the football industry for you to learn firsthand from them. It's an opportunity for you to make connections, build a network, and really become part of an approach to education where we really focus on the industry related material. So all of the main areas of the programs that we run at SBR are continuously focused on what's happening in the industry today, and today's another example, right? Tonight with Keith, we're looking at something that is very new, very relevant in the industry, and that's what we do at SBI. We try to maintain our curriculum very dynamic, relevant, and up to date. So tonight was one example of that. So if you are interested at all to learn more about our programs, please feel free to let us know. Let's move on to our Q&A now. I see we have a couple of questions. So Guillaume says, thank you for your presentation. Super interesting. I'm not a Gen Z anymore. Totally agree about football. There is a similar trend in tennis with UTS, Ultimate Tennis Showdown. Sorry, I've just missed the track here. Ultimate, launched by Mortugalu in 2020. 1 hour games, gamification, cards, etc. It's growing slowly because ATP is very powerful and tennis is a bit conservative, but 5 hour games are way too long. So the two tours might coexist. World Volley is also working on such changes. Big trend in sport. So what do you think about the other sports, Keith? I know you touched upon that as well, but tennis is an interesting one as well, as he mentions.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, again, we're talking here of a factor of speed of the game. And I mentioned, is 90 minutes too long? It seems to be too long for the younger generation. And in tennis, quite right, 3-4 hour sets. I mean, I've just watched Wimbledon just a few weeks ago, and the games can be very long. And you're right, the trend now is to, like TikTok, you've got to get things in very bite-sized pieces, and so tennis does lend itself to that very well. Again, fan interaction again would play very well to tennis. So I think it's a perfect example of where these sort of rules of the gamification of the sport and the packaging of entertainment and people with tennis would work. I think it would be harder though to have the fan interaction with tennis because there's only 1 or 2 players in singles or doubles. At least with a team, even 6-a-side or 7-a-side, and managers on the sideline, it's easier to see more interaction and the celebrities having more control. So tennis might be harder to make that format, but I'm sure that there are brains that can make that happen. But I think that would be an exciting one as well, and there may well be a link up. But you could see the King's Tennis League coming up, that sort of thing as well. So there's no doubt, as I say, cricket, tennis, All these sort of things can work. And you're right, everybody, the ATP is very powerful, but the company that is mentioned there, certainly they will have seen Kings League and Baller League, and they thought, what can we do with tennis? And that's an example of what I'm saying, is that everybody's looking at these things and seeing the success they've had and saying, can we apply it to our sport? And it'll be up to the battle of the formats now and the clever people to find the way to do it and a breakthrough.
Absolutely interesting point. And I'm just to add there, Gerard Piqué was already involved in tennis a few years back with the Davis Cup, so perhaps there's something there as well if he gets involved a little bit further. But interesting point. So thank you, Guillaume. We have a few other questions, and there's some interesting ones like the one from Lovesh Jitwani, who says, "How do you assess the valuation of individual teams within the Kings League and the Baller League? And to what extent are these teams generating sustainable cash flows versus relying on hype-driven growth?" So excellent question there. I think we can unpack.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that is to the crux of it in many ways, that the leagues themselves are doing incredibly well. They are attracting the sponsors and the sponsorship revenue. As I said, only 5% of their revenue is coming from broadcast, which is great for them that they're not reliant on big broadcast, but they're starting to see growth in that area as well because they are getting some linear broadcast contracts. So that's a growth area for them for broadcast. But the sponsorship level is fantastic because they are reaching that Gen Z audience and the numbers are starting to be significant. So as I understand it, the business model is that the Central League is doing very well. The teams themselves, and I gave the example of Troncos, who sold 15% of their franchise for 600,000. Now that gives you a general idea of a valuation there. So in that case, then yes, the clubs themselves are appreciating in value as franchises. As I understand it, their share of the central revenue from the league is more than adequate to keep them going. They're getting all their ticket revenue, which they're selling sold out audiences. So yes, they are being sustainable, from what I understand, and they're doing very well. Now, what will happen next, though, of course, there's always going to be the battle, as there is within traditional football, is the centre keeping too much? Should the clubs have more? And we'll see that play out as it does with every business. But yes, I do see the signs of them generating sustainable cash flows. And I think that's the promising thing. And that's why they've been able to attract investment so far. And getting, as I say, a 60 million euro investment is not to be sniffed at. It's a big deal. And so, good luck to them. And Ball are getting 23, 24 million. Big numbers for really things that have been going for a year. And so, yes, without a forecast and without a sensible cash flow projection, I don't think you'd see those sort of investments coming. And all the signs are there that they're going to be very sustainable and the franchises themselves will become more valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting point. And just to add on that, Keith, if we could discuss this, I mean, I've heard sometimes, I mean, we've seen the numbers and it's evident how this is having a huge uptake among the younger generations. But one of the things that I've heard is, will this become a little bit like the Big Brother, which was something that a lot of people were watching. Everybody was watching the first 2, 3, 4 seasons. And then after a while, Big Brother 10 and 11, 20, or whatever edition it is, it's a bit of the same. So how do you think these leagues need to evolve in a way where it's not just the same old and maintain freshness to precisely continue innovating?
Well, that's obviously a very fair question, but you've got to think, has football changed that much over 100 years? Not really. I mean, we've got things like VAR that have come in and new technologies, but really football is still, 11 against 11 that plays 45 minutes. And so that's succeeded in lasting for a long time. Now, to answer your question more directly, though, about these formats, I think what we'll see is, as we've said right now, that this is appealed to basically a Gen Z audience. Now, of course, those Gen Z audience get older, and then we'll have a new group coming in, and they may have different preferences in how they consume products, and there'll be a different set of influencers and a different set of celebrities. And so, provided these things are kept fresh, there's no reason why they shouldn't appeal in a remade format to that new group of kids coming through. And so, I suppose, there was when I looked at the Kings League and the Baller the other day, Maya Jama. I don't know if many of you would know her, but she's like a model celebrity in the UK. She was made a manager of one of the teams. But in another 3 years, 4 years, there'll be a new version of a Maya Jama that will come in. Just a bit like the pop charts, there'll be new bands coming in all the time in different genres of music. So, provided the owners are smart enough and clever enough to not milk it like Big Brother did and milk it for too long, and maybe rather than, as you say, it got stale about number 11 and 12. If they're clever enough to change it about number 7 or 8 and change the format and keep it fresh and continually keeping it fresh, I don't see any reason why it would change. What will be the ultimate decision factor will be the way that the consumers consume the product. If they change from third screens and second screens, mobiles and laptops into some other new machine that comes up, which I don't know yet. I mean, is it going to be AI glasses or something else, some other way that we start consuming, which I can't predict at the moment, but there could be a way that things are consumed, then that may be the thing that makes a change. So in my crystal ball, I don't see this, provided they're keeping it fresh, I see them being able to refresh it enough for a new younger audience to keep it going.
Excellent. No, really interesting points. Let's take a couple more questions before we begin to wrap up. And Lee's good question as well. She says, do you think the increasing cost and fragmentation of traditional broadcasting rights is pushing fans, especially those younger generations, to look for more accessible, interactive, and fun formats like these leagues, like the Kings League, for example? Could this be the sign that the way we consume football now matters just as much as the game itself?
Absolutely. Look, at least it's a very fair assessment. And I think if we look at the growth of piracy of the signals of games right now, the cost of actually paying subscriptions to consume games right now, never mind going to the game, it's too much. And that's where football is eating itself. And that's where the young generation have said, look, I can create my entertainment and get it on my on streaming situations, legally and legitimately, rather than having to take a pirate feed or a pirate stream, which is all too often available now these days. And that's the one that is actually fragmenting the traditional broadcast rights, is the cost, and it is pushing fans away in terms of the cost factor. So I do think it also is that tied along with accessibility of a good quality streaming signal now, technology improving in that area rather than buffering all the time. So we're starting to see both those improvements, and then the actual barrier of cost, meaning that yes, the way we consume football matters just as much as the game itself. And we're either consuming it by ourselves with a couple of friends. And you're quite right, Lise, that this is what I'm saying about if you can become immersed in this particular format as a fan, and they can do that better than traditional football does, then you will, as you say, just as you in your questions quite rightly says, you will consume it in that way because you'll have more fun doing it. And that's where I think they have a strength if they carry on and execute even better than they're doing right now.
Right, great. Well, we'll take one last question from Stan. Stan, nice to see you. Good to see you online. And Stan says, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. Great ideas and leads explaining potential evolution of football. Undeniable it is that football cannot become a scansion of old precipices and concepts. Very exciting to watch and be part of that new chapter. Entertain or die, he says it will be. So the question he poses is, what is your bet on the time span such changes will be affected?
Well, I think you're right. Entertain or die. I mean, look, we know that live sport has become a premium over the last probably 10 years because people get fed up watching reruns of other shows on TV that it used to be people watching television to watch, on linear television to watch television shows, and that's no longer the case. People have options; they have opportunities to do that. So entertainment is the key, speed is the key, and in terms of timing, I mentioned when in the talk that the pace of change is now so quick. I think that these two formats, while they seem established right now, will soon be threatened by somebody that can actually bring the fan into it even more. That was my prediction for tonight, and that can happen probably within the next year, I would say. So we're now going from an industry lifespan of maybe 5 years down to 1 or 2 years, and that's how quickly these things will change. The other thing, though, that dictates this is now that the other thing we've got to look at is with the digital world, we all know that our buying habits are spied on by the internet companies. We know, we've seen it all before. When you buy something, all of a sudden you get your special emails about special deals on other similar products, etc. So there is now more data collected on habits of young people than ever before. So it will actually become easier for the new formats to become even better targeted and to be able to be predictable and to be, understand where the trends are going quicker than they would have done before. So all these things combined mean that the pace of change will be quicker. And I'm saying that, yes, it could be year to year very soon that we're going to start seeing fresh seasons with new concepts, and there's going to be challenges. And the market could become very split with maybe 20 different attempts at different things, different sports. And that could be one of the things that could cannibalize it, or else it could make it stronger. But nevertheless, it's something that we've all got to look at and be aware of. And that's where it's confusing tonight. And I hope you understand. Haven't got the answers. All I'm trying to do is ask the questions tonight.
Great. Just as a follow-up, Stan says, don't you agree that the developments may further become a fragmenting factor for rich leagues and the rest, for example, 3 to 6 league level where money is scarce?
Yes.
So
Yeah, I totally agree. That's probably the one that's got the most danger, unless they jump on the bandwagon in some way and learn to live with it. Now, there's got to be a way that they've got to be clever and creative, I'm afraid. Otherwise, you die. And that's where they've got to change slightly. And they've got to look at how they can perhaps do this on a limited scale in their own local communities, perhaps. I don't know the answers for that. But if I was the chief executive at one of those clubs, I'd be desperately trying to find something to try and keep the young people in my town connected to my club. Now, it's a hard question. But yes, they are the ones at risk, and they've got to be clever and smart. Otherwise, you're right, they will be in bigger trouble.
excellent. Well, thank you, Stan. Really interesting points. And as we said from the outset, we're really glad that we got engagement with the questions, because the objective tonight was not just to learn, but also to participate. And you've certainly given us some interesting points in the questions that you posed and the comments that you shared with us here tonight. So thanks to all of you that connected, that formed part of this webinar and participated. We hope that you took away some interesting insight regarding these new formats, particularly the Kings League and Baller League, which we analyzed today with Keith. And of course, Keith, thanks for your time and your dedication in sharing this with the SBI community. Always great to learn from you. You have a wealth of experience in a number of areas, and tonight you've shown us that in these new formats of consuming sport, there's some potential and some really interesting numbers to keep an eye on. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Diego. And all I'm trying to do is provoke thought amongst all the students. And, as we all delve deeper into this segment of the whole sports, market, it's something we've got to keep an eye on, because there's no doubt something is moving here. The tectonic plates of sport are moving, and we've got to be aware of it.
Indeed, indeed. Good to always keep our finger on the pulse, and tonight we certainly did that. I don't have my camera available, but I think many of you know how my face looks. But in that case, on behalf of everybody here at SBI and the team that put this webinar together, we want to thank you once again for connecting, and we look forward to hosting you in our next webinar coming up in about 3 or 4 weeks. So stay tuned. We'll have more. And of course, thank you again, Keith. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.